Hey, Falcons fans and NFL fans, welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins with Tom Pollen. I'm Dave Holcomb, our producer, Chris Smitherman, behind the scenes. As we said last week, we're going to talk all fantasy football today. If you send us some Falcons comments, maybe we can hit upon a topic there as well. But today is going to be heavy fantasy. We want to help you out with your drafts. Hopefully they haven't taken place yet. Preseason games wrapped up last weekend, so it was okay to draft this week. But for sure, you want to be drafting after the preseason is over so that you don't draft any player that gets injured in a game.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty have already gone in injured.
Right.
So it's, we've lost some players that we thought we were going to have for fantasy. So it can be rough until you get through the preseason. I do have one quick Falcons note that I wanted to bring up. Kind of took me by surprise. Quadri Allison ended up getting cut this week.
Yeah.
After initially making the roster, I was a little surprised about that. Wayne Gallman does have some positive stats running for the Giants, but I didn't see that coming after he made the roster. I really thought he was a lock for the roster.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of him. And I was as well. We were both touting him this summer, so we were both surprised by that.
Yeah, so just a little nugget for to throw out there for Falcons fans to start out with. And let us know what you think. Let us know what you think of the team. Let us know what you think about the team going forward, heading into the season now. But right now we want you to make money. We want you to show everybody what a football expert you are.
Right.
Dominate your league. Let them know, they're messing with somebody if they mess with you. So, Dave's going to tell you how to do it this week. Tom not as much, but Dave's going to tell you how to do it this week.
Right. Yeah. I guess go back to the Falcons real quick at running back. A lot of their moves at running back have surprised me. When we talked about it last week with, Cordero Patterson being a running back, you don't have as many spots to have, traditional running backs. And then you have a fullback, which you don't have a fullback on the depth chart anymore. So he's just listed as a running back. And you really only have two guys other than those, other than those two on the active roster.
I like the fact that they kept the fullback.
I do too. And they've had him on the roster this isn't an Arthur Smith thing. He's been on the Falcons for years.
Right.
But when you have Patterson now as well, you just don't have as many traditional running backs.
And you're looking at the durability of Davis. Let's
true.
See
That's
how
true. Mad Mike is here.
Mad Mike,
day off.
Great to see you. He has a day off.
And
yeah.
Mad Mike, I saw he was tweeting about Georgia this morning. Georgia football has a huge game tonight against Clemson. And I guess Tom and I'm wearing my Georgia shirt. Are you wearing red as well for Georgia?
For Falcons.
For the Falcons. Okay.
For the Falcons. So going red for the Falcons.
Yeah.
Bowman is an upgrade. Yeah. I think so. He's actually carried the ball quite a bit in the pros. As I said, I got his stats up here. Giants, for 4 seasons with the Giants, gained 680 yards last year. So that's
I was going to say he played a lot because of Barkley's injury.
Yeah. So he does have a lot of upside for the Falcons this year, and is a positive. I just thought, I thought Allison had a lot of upside. So, he hasn't had a chance to show it yet, but I thought he had some upside. But, we don't coach, so.
No, we don't. We only coach fantasy teams.
So, but we're going to get you into fantasy. We're going to help you pick that killer fantasy lineup. I'm going to be doing my draft Monday night at 8 o'clock. So
Labor Day is a great day to draft. It really is. You can just pencil it in every year. It's the end of the weekend, so everybody's back from whatever they were doing all weekend. Everybody's off that day too. So if you're not vacationing, you can prepare for your draft last minute. It's a great day to have a fantasy draft.
Yeah, I think so. It works out great. And I'm going to take a lot of the tips that you give me today, and I'm going to kick some fantasy butt this year.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope we all do.
It's
So
$500 first place. I'm going to kick
$500 for first place.
Yeah,
Is that what's on the line?
that's right.
Wow. Okay. All
I'm
right.
going for it.
Let's go. So before we get into more of the nitty gritty rankings of each of players, there's three general pieces of advice that I would give people starting out, and I think these are good for beginners or more advanced fantasy owners. Um, Number one, you have to know your scoring system and the format of your league before you prepare for your draft. And this probably sounds, um, obvious to people that have done fantasy football before, but sometimes you switch leagues year to year. There's different commissioners. Sometimes there are rule changes if you're in a league for a long time, and those rules changes matter. If you have the option to start your tight end in your flex this year, but that wasn't an option last year, that changes how you rank tight ends.
Yeah.
If you're going to if you have a league with two quarterbacks versus only one, that's a huge difference. Do your quarterbacks get 4 points for passing touchdowns or 6? Huge difference there, how you rank your quarterbacks.
Okay.
Personal story, back when I was a beginner in fantasy football, I joined a league and didn't realize that
4 or 6 points for touchdown.
I didn't realize that there were 3 starting wide receivers in this league that I was joining.
Okay.
So I was drafting running backs. I waited on my quarterback, but I got a good quarterback. I got, I think, a pretty good wide receiver 1. And then in the middle of the draft, I was like, why are all these wide receivers going so fast? I didn't know that I had to have 3 starters at wide receiver. And it took me weeks of hitting the waiver wire to get 3 quality guys that could start every week, especially during the buys. Like, I just didn't have the depth to have 3 starters at wide receiver every single week. And I made that mistake because I didn't know the scoring system. I didn't know the starting lineup system prior to preparing for my draft. So that is very, very important.
There's one thing I want to emphasize too. It's something I've found out as I've gone through fantasy football seasons. You don't win the season on draft day.
It's true.
You
can set yourself up really nicely.
You set up a solid team.
Yeah.
But you really got to keep an eye on that waiver wire from week to week, because you're always going to have players who come out that you never even had on the horizon. You never even had on your radar going into the season. And that's the thing. It's important to do great in the draft, but don't think that just because you might have missed or screwed up a couple of draft picks, or maybe you should have taken this guy instead of that guy, you haven't messed up your season. You still got a lot of season. You can still get some good players with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have stories where I started 5-0 and I didn't win the championship. And then there's one time I started 0-4 and I came back and I won the championship.
Yeah.
So like the draft sets you up very nicely. It can get you a first round bye if there are buys. And it can put you in a real good position to win your championship. But you're right. The real big key, in addition to drafting well, is picking up the waiver wire, the waiver wire additions, and that's why we're hoping to help you with that during the season as well.
Yeah, exactly. We'll keep an eye on all this for you. So, Dave is our draft expert. Actually, I am, my alter ego is Nostradamus, and I'm going to be taking you through the season, helping you make picks against the spread, and hopefully we're going to make a little money as the season goes on that way too. So, keep your eye on us, because I'm going to start getting my stat sheets ready. Got to turn the bottom of your yes.
Yeah, Brian's absolutely right. Yeah.
Brian.
You absolutely have to, and it's funny because you want to have a good start in September for your fantasy team, but sometimes it's not a bad thing if you go 2-2 in September, because then you're like, okay, I need to improve. I have to get better. I have to pay attention to the waiver wire. If you're 4-0, complacency can set in a little bit, and you're like, well, my team is really good. I don't need this waiver wire addition, and that's probably true at the time. But great example, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was on your team last year, you're like, oh, I'm set at quarterback. I don't need any additions at quarterback. Russell Wilson is
me.
Russell Wilson's going to win MVP.
Yeah.
Well, Russell Wilson did not continue that pace.
That was me. That was me. That was my season. You just looked it up.
And that's true. That's true for running backs, wide receivers. You're not if you're on pace for 2,000 yards after 4 games, that pace usually doesn't continue.
Yeah, I struggled at quarterback all year because Russell Wilson started slipping, and it hurt. I couldn't find anybody who could at that point that could that could save the season for me. It became very rough as the year went on.
And Brian says DK Metcalf fell off as well because of Russell Wilson tailing off, and that's very true.
So did Tyler Lockett, and I had Lockett as one of my wide receivers. So
that is a nice transition into my next point that I want people to have in mind prior to drafting. And you want to target players in great offenses, and in a perfect world, you avoid players in bad offenses. Now, there's going to be exceptions to this rule. This isn't really a concrete hard rule like the first one. You got to know your scoring system.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, give me all the Chiefs players. Give me all the Buccaneers players. I want as many of those guys as I can. And if I'm between two guys, like if I know this isn't the best example because we have a Falcons listenership, so they're going to pick Kyle Pitts anyway over other tight ends. But if you're between Kyle Pitts and Noah Fant, Kyle Pitts and the other tight end that I think he's next to, pulling up my tight end list here. Kyle Pitts is sandwiched at number 6 on the Fantasy Pros ranking list. He is sandwiched between T.J. Hawkinson and Noah Fant.
Noah Fant, he's never really produced to the level that everybody thought he would since he's come into the league.
Well, I think Noah Fant is very talented. I like him, but he's got no quarterback, and that's what I'm talking about with great offenses. Do you want the Detroit Lions tight end? You definitely don't want the Detroit Tigers tight end. Definitely don't want that.
No, don't want the Tigers tight end.
Do you want the Lions tight end, Broncos tight end, or do you want the Falcons tight end? If they're all things being equal, which basically they are, they're ranked 5, 6, and 7. I want the guy in the Falcons offense. I want the player in the much better offense.
Yes, right.
So I'm not saying don't draft Noah Fant. I'm not saying don't draft T.J. Hawkins. So there are going to be situations where you might get a player in a bad offense. But when you're presented with a situation where you have a choice, go with the guy that has the much better offense. And normally that means go with the guy that has the much better quarterback.
Okay. And I know from what you've said earlier, you want to wait on drafting the quarterback, but you're taking the quarterback into account when you're looking at your skill position players.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to take the quarterback into account. Quarterback might not be super important to scoring fantasy points, but he's going to be important to your running backs and wide receiver scoring fantasy points.
Right. How do you look at the offensive coordinator? Do you look at that with any importance?
Yes, I would say I do. Not necessarily like what scheme specifically a coordinator is running. Brian says if you want Pitts, he's going in the 3rd round. Yeah, I think you're right. My example was just having to do with wanting to get players in good offenses, Brian. But to your point, Tom, I think the offensive coordinator is probably most important in a situation where has he been there for a long time? Is this quarterback comfortable in this system? Does the wide receiver or running back that I'm drafting fit in that offense? Is he used? Does the coordinator like my player? Does he like using my running back?
Mm-hmm.
I had DeAndre Swift last year, and I just felt like the Detroit Lions, Matt Patricia, was so stubborn and he kept running Adrian Peterson, who's like 40 years old. It's like, get Adrian Peterson out of there and put in your young rookie. That was so frustrating because it's like Swift is very talented, but
yes, he is.
He is not going to be valuable to my fantasy team if he's not on the field and if he's not getting touches. And that is where the offensive coordinator comes into play. Does the offensive coordinator like using your player? That's what I would say with the impact that a coordinator can make.
All right, that sounds good.
And I guess along the same lines, if you're looking at a good team or a bad team, not only do you want players on good offenses, in general, especially running backs, you want running backs and players on good teams, because your running back is not going to be running very much if he's on a bad team that's behind all the time. Mm-hmm. So as great as DeAndre Swift could be this year, or as talented as we think he is, Detroit's going to win what, 3-4 games?
They are just terrible coming into the season. So that's what you're looking at.
They're not going to have the lead very much. They're going to be behind a lot. And so how even without Adrian Peterson and without Kerryon Johnson this year, they do have Jamal Williams now, who's going to eat up carries with Swift.
Yes.
And how many opportunities are those two guys going to get when the Lions are going to be behind almost all the time? So that is a factor as well in terms of, okay, do I want, if you're between two guys and one guy's on a good team, a team that's supposed to go to the playoffs, and the other guy is on a bad team, you go with the guy on the good team because of the reasons I'm saying, because they're going to have more opportunities to score, and they're going to, if you're a running back, they're not going to be behind in games. Mm-hmm. And there'll be more opportunities for running backs to run in late in the game.
Yeah, by the way, Brian, Houston, a lot of teams are going to be better than Houston this year. Don't worry about
that. Brian has another comment, load up on wide receivers and running backs. I absolutely love that. And that really basically goes into my third point, which I've said to you before this summer. Wait on your quarterback. Yeah. Now, this comes with a caveat. If you're in a 2-quarterback system league, you can't do that. You have 10 teams in your 2-quarterback league. 20 quarterbacks are starting every week. You don't want to have the 20th best quarterback. No. You can't wait on your quarterback in that league. So this is going to be this advice varies based on your scoring system and your format. If you have a 6-point touchdown passing league, you also don't want to wait quite as long on your quarterback because the quarterbacks are more valuable.
How about number of teams in the league? Because I'm going to have 14 teams in my league.
That's a lot of teams. Yeah. That's a big league. So you have to take that into account. In general, I would say, you want to load up on running backs, wide receivers in the first 4 or 5 rounds, maybe even 6 rounds. But it depends. I would not wait after the 6th round, though, in a 14-team league.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I'm in an 8-team league with my high school friends. I don't have that many high school friends left, so we only have 8 players. So it's a much smaller league. I can wait until the 6th, 7th, maybe even 8th round to draft a quarterback because there's not as many teams. But in a 14-team league, you don't want to wait that long.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No, that's kind of what I was thinking. And that because I know we've gone through the wait on drafting your quarterback, but at some point with 14 teams, I'm going to have to pull the trigger, and I was wondering what a good time to pull the trigger would be. So, Okay.
It's hard for me to tell you because, well, at least you're giving me more details than, say the average listener is not every listener is going to be able to tell me, well, this is my specific situation. In general, you want to wait on your quarterback. Mm-hmm. How long and where, that's going to be your decision. It's hard for me to say. But I do have some details about where quarterbacks are being taken based on their ADP, average draft position, from Fantasy Pros. And then I love using Fantasy Pros' overall expert consensus rankings.
Mm-hmm.
If there's somebody out there that you trust his or her rankings 100%, then by all means use them. But no one is right 100% of the time
Oh no.
with fantasy football. So I like using the consensus rankings at Fantasy Pros. It takes into account, I don't know, 10, 15 experts, and it's an average that I think has really worked well for me the last few years using those rankings. And just about every top quarterback has a lower ADP, so they're being taken earlier than their ranking.
Okay. Right.
So just about every quarterback, that tells me, is being overdrafted. Patrick Mahomes, ADP 14.5. Consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros is 24. He's getting taken 10 spots earlier than the rankings say he should be. Now, I'm not saying, in my advice, when I say wait on your quarterback, I'm not saying don't draft Patrick Mahomes. This is how I would approach the situation. You see Mahomes' ADP is 14.5. So he's going to go in your 14-team league. He's going to go in the first round, or the second pick in the first pick in the second round. If you're picking 24th, 25th, and he's still there at you in the second round, if you want him, I would go ahead and take Patrick Mahomes there.
Okay.
That goes against what I'm saying, wait on your quarterback. But to me, you did wait on your quarterback. You waited for Patrick Mahomes to fall to you to a situation where the average, the consensus rankings say he is a good pick.
Okay.
And I would do that. I would go on Fantasy Pros and write down every quarterback's ADP and then their consensus rankings. And you're kind of looking at, he's probably going to be taken where his ADP is. But if I am picking around where his consensus ranking is, and he's still there, and I want this quarterback, I would go ahead and pull the trigger there. So that you could get Mahomes in the second. Josh Allen, his ADP 28. So in your 14-team league, he's going at the end of the second round.
Mm-hmm.
His consensus ranking is 38. So if you're picking in the middle of the third round, you want Josh Allen, he's still there. I think that's okay to draft him there, because the ranking says that is providing you value. That, to me, waiting on the quarterback, you're trying to find value at running back and wide receiver, but you're also not overdrafting quarterback. And if you're waiting for these quarterbacks to fall to their ranking, you're not overdrafting them. And that, to me, makes it okay to pick them, even if you're taking a quarterback earlier than I would say, when I say the fifth round is kind of where you want to get them.
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. You're right. And that's something you have to look at, is where is his overall ranking. And yeah, Fantasy Pros is a great site. We should get product placement money for this.
We should. Well, speaking of product placement, I should give a shout out to Bill Enright. He wrote probably 10 years ago now a great story for ffchamps.com, which unfortunately isn't around anymore. He now writes for Sports Illustrated's fantasy football team. And he had a list of 10 commandments that you should follow to win your fantasy league. And the 3 pieces of advice that I gave you were all 3 of his 10 commandments. So I've used those 10 commandments for years and very successfully. I think these are the 3 most important commandments that I can give you, especially ahead of your draft.
Great. Yeah, that works for me. And it's good explanation. So, that's something I'll be keeping an eye on as I go through the draft. How much preparation do you do before you draft? What do you recommend? Can you overthink this thing?
I don't know. I mean, I guess you can always overthink anything, but to me, more information is better. The more research you do, the more prep that you do, is going to help, is going to be better. And I guess what I like to do is I've hopefully you're not in a league. Sometimes you have those leagues where they don't assign your draft pick until like an hour before the draft. You ever been in one of those leagues?
That's pretty much where I'm at.
Oh, so you don't know where you're picking in your 14?
Don't know.
That stinks. I hate that. So I guess an hour before your draft, you're gonna have
Sarah
to do
and
this.
Archangel. Thanks
Yeah,
to you
thanks
guys
for
joining.
joining in. We're
Yep.
talking fantasy football. If you have any Falcons comments, though, please let us know. We can get to a Falcons topic towards the end of the show. But
Yeah.
we're diving all into fantasy football drafting, preparing for our draft this weekend. So before the draft, I like to say, okay, I'm picking 7th. These are my 7. These are the 7 best players, in my opinion. I'm going to get one of these players.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's a snake draft, in my 8-team league, then I rank the 10 best players, or I add 3 players to my top 7. And I say, okay, well, I'm going to get 2 of these players. And I start getting excited. It's like, okay, I feel really comfortable with 2 of these 10 guys being my 2 best players this season. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to wait until the hour before your draft in order to do that, and I guess probably rank more players. If you're picking 5th, you're going to have 5 guys for the first round, but then it's going to be what? I can't do quick math. 20, 14 plus the snake. You're picking 7th in the 7th in the second round.
No, yeah.
Oh no, maybe 9th. 9th.
Yeah.
9th.
So. It's Saturday. You want me to do math?
Yeah. Anyway,
I do math when I do my football picks, because then I got to look at But
Archangel says he already did 1 draft. Let us know who you got. Who'd you get with your first pick?
Yeah, who'd you get?
Do you like your team? Let us know, and then he's got 1 more tomorrow. So that'll.
And if anybody else has drafts that you want to let us know, who did you get? Who are you proud of? Who are you happy with? What sleeper did you get that you think is just going to bust out and be that guy? And that's kind of what I'm going to ask Dave a little bit later. Kind of what his the secrets. Brian Friedman got to go. Damn. I hate to see it go, Brian. Catch up with the rest of it later. Catch up with the broadcast later. They gave you an A on Yahoo. Okay.
That's
good.
Cool.
That's great. How many teams? How big the league? So pick 7 to 10. Jackson, Ryan. Okay, traded Tannehill. All right, that's not a bad thing. But you gotta, that's the thing. You gotta be flexible. You got to be flexible and make those changes that you need to make. Our games is in a 12-player league. You've got to make those changes, very quick. Don't sit on guys I have a hard time saying that too, because week 1 is always a tough week to pick games.
Yeah.
Week 2 is also a tough week to pick games because everybody's overreacting from week 1.
Right.
So, I don't want to say exactly that, you got to make immediate changes, but Archangel 12-player league. Okay, that's great. You were able to do so well. That's great. I'm in a 14-player, so we'll see how that goes.
It's interesting that Pantera brings up Matt Ryan and Ryan Tannehill making a trade. Had a trade involving both quarterbacks. Tannehill is ranked 10th on Fantasy Pros' list of quarterbacks. Matt Ryan is 14th, and those are the first 2 quarterbacks. Oh no, Ryan is the second one, I believe. Ryan is the third one. Tannehill is the first quarterback of the top 10. Tannehill is the only quarterback that is ranked where his ADP is.
Okay.
So he's being drafted on average 85th overall, and he is also the 85th overall player according to the Fantasy Pros consensus rankings. The other quarterbacks ahead of him ranked in the top 10 all have an ADP lower than where his ranking is. And by lower, I mean, is it lower or higher? I'm always confused by that. Lower as in a lower number.
Yeah, but he's higher rated.
But he's higher
rated.
Yeah. Right. Jalen Hurts also has he's 91st overall ranking, 94.8 ADP. So he is being undervalued. Is what that's telling me. And so is Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, 117th best player, 129.3 ADP. Mm-hmm. So you can get quite a bit of value. Tannehill is right where he should be, basically. Hurts a little bit of value there in terms of his ranking in ADP. Matt Ryan in the top 15, I would say he is the most undervalued quarterback.
Okay. No, it's worth keeping an eye on. So, let's see. Where do I go from here? As I say, Dave.
Well, do you have any more questions about quarterbacks, or should we move into running backs, wide receivers?
No, move into running backs, wide receivers.
Let's head into that. I guess, I said I was only going to have 3 pieces of advice, and I knew this was going to happen, that I would think of more as we went. Another thing that you could think about doing, I told you kind of what I'd like to do with, at least at the top of the draft. I got my top 7 players, top 10 players. Maybe you can even do it for the 3rd round if you have a smaller league. If you have the 14-team league, I don't think you want to do you might as well just do a big board if you're going to start ranking 50 players, if you're picking 50th in the 3rd round overall.
Well, that's what I do. I have a big board. I got like 500 players on the list, and I'm moving them around as they're getting to. So yeah, this place becomes a real NFL war room when I'm drafting. So
do you have the chalkboard or do you have the whiteboard?
No, we got the whiteboard. We're modern here.
Oh, okay.
We do the
Very good. Yeah. Very good. But another thing you could think about doing, especially at running back and wide receivers, is tiering your players. And another great thing that Fantasy Pros does is they do it for you. You don't have to do it yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, Fantasy Pros does do a good job of tiering everybody, so you can judge it that way. And it's going to come in handy when I do my draft Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can help. This is how tiering is useful. So if you have your tier 1 running backs and they have 4 guys, Fantasy Pros has 4 running backs in tier 1. And then here, I'm going to pull up the tiers here. And then actually they have tiers. They have overall tiers, and then they have tiers broken down by position.
Yes, right. Which is going to be fun to see.
They have Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs in the tier 1 at wide receiver. So if you're picking, I don't know, 5th, let's say, and yeah, we'll say 5th, and the first 4 running backs are all taken, and that's the tier 1 running backs are gone. The tier 1 running backs.
Now let's put it this way: if you're in your first round and you're looking for a running back, you're looking for a McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook or somebody like that, and they're gone.
Right.
Do you go to wide receiver or do you take the next best running back?
Well, that's what I'm getting to. Okay. That's the tiers. If you tier guys, it depends. It depends on personal preference. It depends on how you like to build your team. We see this in real life too. Certain organizations always seem to have great defenses or good special teams,
right?
Because that's how they like to win games. That's how they build their team. Even within a defense, like for instance, I've been watching the Steelers for a long time. Obviously, they always draft outside linebackers. They're always so strong at outside linebacker, weak at cornerback. And for years, fans are like, "Why don't you draft a cornerback? Why don't you draft a cornerback?" That's just not how they build their defense. They like to put pressure on the quarterback. And they're going to get as
Dave's gone.
Dave, we lost Dave. Okay, I was wondering if you lost me.
No.
Dave.
Well, that's why I hopped on. I was like, okay, Chris has got to hop in the webcast because Dave is frozen.
Okay. Yeah. Boy, that's something. Well, we'll get him back in a little bit, folks. But I think I know kind of where Dave was going as far as what he was drawing an analogy, and you could carry that over to offense. How do teams build their offense? Do they, are they a run? Do they?
Oh,
okay. Dave, come on. Oh,
I think it's trying to catch up to him. I'm gonna take him out the chat, and then he can hop back in.
Okay, yeah. So the main thing is, does a team have a history of running backs? Does a team have a history of strong wide receivers? And you can look back on the team history and kind of get an idea of what an NFL team wants to do, and that could, or maybe should, give you an idea of who you want to pick. Might be the deciding difference between taking a running back from a particular team at a particular time or taking a wide receiver. It's interesting how Fantasy Pros does their picks because they have some guys, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, I would say definitely on top because both can catch the ball too. And to me, that's one of the things you want to look for when you're looking for a running back too. Is this guy important in the passing game as well as he is in the running game? For me, that makes a lot of difference the way I look at the draft. Like Christian McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook are very, McCaffrey has been the Panthers' lead receiver, lead runner for years. Now, the only question I have about McCaffrey is he going to stay healthy as we move forward? But it's interesting because Fantasy Pros has in their tier 2, Alvin Kamara, who I actually thought would be a little bit higher. Nick Chubb doesn't contribute in the passing game, but is a monster running back. And I know Kareem Hunt does take some of the carries away from Chubb, but Chubb is healthy. I don't think Kareem Hunt's going to get as many carries this year. Saquon Barkley's in tier 2. I wouldn't take Saquon Barkley right now. We got to see how healthy Saquon Barkley is. So I differ from the way Fantasy Pros has their lineup set up because I'm not looking at Ezekiel Elliott as my tier 2 running back. If Chris McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry are all gone, I'm not looking to come in with Ezekiel Elliott as my either running back 2, or if I didn't get a running back, or if my favorite running backs have been taken before I could draft. Let's say I'm drafting 8th in a league, and McCaffrey, Cook, and Henry are gone. I'm not looking at Elliott as one of my running back 1. I'm not looking at Saquon Barkley as my running back 3, actually, not until he can show what he can do as we move forward. They have Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor didn't get a lot of ink last year until kind of like the end of the year. And this is a guy I think is going to break out big time this year for the Colts. And I like Jonathan Taylor as a running back. And I wouldn't hesitate for a minute to take him. Now, from what Dave was saying, you want to look at your quarterback. Well, the quarterback situation in Indianapolis is unsettled because you don't know whether Carson Wentz is going to be it's looking like he's not going to be a starter. Do we have Dave back? Because Dave is back. Dave is back.
I swear I paid my internet bill. Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I've just been moving through players, talking about the tiers and as far as running backs, but
Yeah, I was taking a long time to probably answer that question anyway. But basically, yeah, you want to tier your players. Fantasy Pros does it for you.
Yeah, I
Look,
was just looking at how I don't agree with some of the tiers that Fantasy Pros.
I was just about to say, as much as we're touting Fantasy Pros, it's okay to interject your own opinion and make your own rankings. I start with Fantasy Pros. That's how you get started, and then you use your own intuition, your own opinion, because this is your team. You don't want to be a slave to the rankings. And yeah, so you make your own tiers and you make your own decisions. The question that you're asking me about, do you want to, if you're picking fifth and the top running backs are gone, do you take the next best running back or the top wide receiver?
Right.
I think in that situation, I would take the next best running back. But it depends how you feel. It depends also on your scoring system. If it's PPR, you're probably going wide receiver.
Okay.
But it's you make your own. I guess it's your team. You make your own personal decision there. My advice is you tier the players, and then if you're really stuck between like, well, do I get the 8th best running back who's like at the bottom of tier 2, or there's still a tier 1 wide receiver left? That's where you get the tier 1 wide receiver.
Zozo, you want to contribute here? You want to chime in on who you should take? She just wants to look out the window. So settle down, Zozo. Come on. You can't keep walking in front of me like this. Fantasy Cat with Zozo. We got to do a show like that.
That could be the name of your fantasy team, Fantasy Cat.
I might just change it. Yes. Okay. I'm all for that.
What was it before?
Just a generic name.
Okay.
I really didn't have a good name. Fantasy Cat. I love that. That's good. I'm going with that. So, yeah, Zozo wants to look out the window. But, okay, because I was saying in tier 2, yeah, you got to kind of make your own tiers, starting with Fantasy Pros, because, tier 2, I see Saquon Barkley. I'm not taking Saquon Barkley right now for anything. Because
that was gonna be my question to you. What don't you like about the Fantasy Pros tiers? Saquon Barkley is your biggest beef?
Well, one of them is Saquon Barkley, that he is in tier 2, because to me, you got to see how his injury plays out. We really didn't see any of him in the preseason. We don't know how well he's going to run.
Yeah.
So I think you're taking a big risk taking Barkley if he's available in your first round. If McCaffrey, Cook, and Henry are gone, and tell you the truth, I think maybe Henry might be a little overrated right now. 2,000-yard rushers do not follow up with strong seasons.
Yeah.
2,000-yard rushers usually drop below 1,500 yards in the following season. So, and Derrick Henry does not play a big role in the return game. I mean, in the passing game.
Right.
So, I would worry about Derrick Henry being in tier 1.
I think
Derrick Henry, I wrote him last year. He was on my team. But I don't know if I would do that this year because, the guy carried the ball 380 times last year.
You have to take into account, too, they added Julio Jones. So there's going to be more emphasis on passing just because they've got to feed Jones and Brown. Like A.J. Brown is legit top 3 wide receiver in the league, and now they also have a top 3 wide receiver from the previous decade.
Right.
So that's a lot to. It's going to be a lot to keep those guys satisfied, getting them the ball enough, and they might have added Jones because of what you're saying, because they want to take some of the load away from Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Which is good for the Titans, not good if you have Derrick Henry on your fantasy team.
Right. So now that coach came to Atlanta. Do you look at Mike Davis or Calvin Ridley or Kyle Pitts differently? Because, Smith liked to use running backs and tight ends. He's strong with them in his offense. Does that raise Kyle Pitts and Calvin Ridley on your draft board?
I think it does maybe a little bit. Comparing I mean, I don't know where we don't know where Kyle Pitts would have been on the draft board last year in Dan Quinn's. It wasn't Dan Quinn's offense, but on Dan Quinn's team.
Yeah.
Um,
Dirk Cutter's offense.
Dirk Cutter's offense, yeah. But yeah, I like looking at Mike Davis. I like him a lot, and we kind of began the show talking about the Falcons running back situation. And part of why I like Mike Davis is because they don't have a whole lot there. I mean, they have a fullback, they have Cordell Patterson, and maybe the Falcons have this secret ingredient for how they're going to use Patterson, and he's going to touch the ball a lot in the backfield, and he's going to be really good at it. But the Bears tried that last year, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it didn't really go that well.
No, it didn't.
And
Patterson, if you get the ball in space, does fine. You don't want Patterson running between guards,
right?
Guard and tackle. That's not where he's going to give you his best value.
Right.
So
right. He's on this roster to return kicks, and
kind of be a dynamic, kind of give you a little bit of dynamic offense as far as what you can do with him as a weapon. But yeah, I mean, there were times Matt Nagy ran him up the middle last year.
Yeah.
There's one, he's running Cordell Patterson up the middle.
Right.
And
right.
No, you don't want to see that. That's not what he's going to give you as a running back.
Agreed. And hopefully Arthur Smith doesn't try that. And even if he does, I don't think it'll go well. And hopefully he doesn't continue to try it. And I think that bodes well for Mike Davis because Wayne Gallman is a decent backup, but he's a backup. He's not going to carve into his starting role. I don't think Patterson's going to carve into the starting role. And the other running back on the roster is a fullback. So Davis is in a situation where he's going to touch the ball a lot. He's clearly the top guy. He's good in the passing game. We saw that with Teddy Bridgewater last year. So you said you were going to ask me about sleepers. Sleepers is a complicated thing for me anyway, because I don't go into a draft thinking, okay, these are my 5 sleepers that I got to get. You can't go into any draft thinking, I got to get this player. Because you inevitably, if you do that, you're going to overdraft to get that player.
Yes.
Dynasty League drafts are different because it's more like the real draft. You're going to get this player and have him for life. And if you don't maybe overdraft him a little bit, he's going to be playing against you for years and years and years. And you don't want that. So take that. What I'm saying doesn't really apply to dynasty leagues, but in redraft leagues, you throw your fandom out the door, you throw your hatred for certain players or teams out the door, and you don't go in thinking I got to get this sleeper, because you can have in mind, all right, I think Davis is going to be here at this point, and I would really like to get him as my RB3. You can have that strategy, and I think you should, because I like Davis a lot, as he's ranked 23rd on the Fantasy Pros list. I think he could be a top 20 running back, and I think he could really give you some great value as a later pick. But you don't go in thinking, I got to get Mike Davis and then draft him to be your RB2, when the reason why I like him is he's valuable as a flex RB3.
Right. Okay. No, I understand that. Yeah. How about defenses? Let's look at defenses and because we're not, and special teams and defenses is kind of the way it's set up.
Right.
Let's go on to the defensive side of the ball. They can actually cost you points if you don't do it right. And if you've got a defense that is, maybe middle of the league, and they have a bad game, you're looking at you might actually lose a week because you've got a bad defense, or you didn't pay enough attention to your defense.
Right. I absolutely agree. I've never had the strategy of I want to get the best fantasy defense in the league. And the reason for that is I think the matchup for defenses is really important. you can have an average defense, but if they're playing a bad quarterback, a bad offense, they can have a really big day. There are exceptions in terms of like I typically I don't want to start even the best defense, especially in if we were doing 1990 fantasy football, it'd be different because defense back then beat offenses about just all the time. But the league has changed. I hate to say it as a defensive fan. The league has changed to a point where great offenses beat great defenses. And great defenses still give up almost 20 points a game. There's very few defenses giving up fewer than 3 touchdowns a game on average.
Yeah, that's true.
So I just don't like starting, even if it's the best defense, I don't like starting them against Patrick Mahomes, against Tom Brady. So a great example of this personally for me last year when the Ravens played the Chiefs, I think in week 3 on Monday Night Football, I have the Ravens defense on my dynasty team and I benched them and I found another defense that did a good job. The Ravens ended up scoring a special teams touchdown in that game. So they did have a decent score, even though they gave up 40 points to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
So there are other ways for your defense to contribute to your team other than just stopping the other team. They could give up 40 points and get 7 sacks. They can score on special teams. They could give up 40 points but score 2 touchdowns on a fumble return or an interception return. So there are, I guess, exceptions to what I'm saying. But for the most part, I would shy away from a defense that's playing a really good offense, no matter how good that defense is. So when you're looking at the fantasy football or the fantasy pros defensive rankings, I'm going to use the Steelers as an example. The Steelers are number 2 on the list. And in real life, they're a top 5 defense. They're probably over the whole season, they'll be a top 5 fantasy defense. But do you want them week 1 playing against the Bills? Do you want them week 4 against the Green Bay Packers? And then they play Lamar Jackson twice. They play Nick Chubb twice. They play Russell Wilson. So everybody talked about how weak the Steelers' schedule was last year. They have a very tough schedule this year. And I'm not overreaching to get what is considered the second best fantasy defense when I can wait and get a defense like the Buffalo Bills or the New Orleans Saints or the Cleveland Browns. They're in the top 15 and they have a much, I would say, easier schedule. Mm-hmm. The schedule to me makes a huge difference with defenses.
Okay. That's fair enough. So, but I wanted to cover it. You never know. I just want to hear what you have to say about it. So
I like using – if you want to wait on your defense, as I suggest, it's not a bad idea to grab 2 defenses. And that's
another thing I was going to ask you.
This will take a lot of prep, and you can't use it for the whole season. But what you could do is you could look at, the the mid-team defenses, like maybe the defense that's ranked 8th through 16th or something like that, and look at their schedules and make a chart. And then the chart is a schedule, week 1 through week 10. Mm-hmm. And then you shade in green where there's a favorable matchup for that defense that week, and shade in red where that defense is playing in a bad matchup against a really good offense. And then you can kind of figure out, okay, well, I compare this defense A to defense B because I can start them this week. They have a green matchup. This week they have a green. This week this team has a green matchup, and then you're platooning your defense. The reason why I say don't make the chart all the way through week 16 is offenses are going to be different. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Change. Right.
Right now, we think New York Jets is a bad offense. It's a good matchup. By week 8, if Zach Wilson's having a Rookie of the Year type season,
right,
they're not a green matchup on your chart anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to see how other teams. That's the thing. You're never going to be exactly right in how you evaluate how a season's going to go, how first month is going to go in September. So yeah, you've got to be flexible when it comes to looking at your players, looking at your defense, and looking at how you do things as the season goes on.
And I guess we have about 5 minutes left in the show. Maybe the last point we should make is be flexible just in general. If you go in with the strategy of, okay, I'm going to get 2 defenses and I'm going to platoon my defenses, but you're in the second to last round or third to last round, maybe you're in the third to last round and you were going to take defenses both in the with your last 2 picks, but with your third to last pick, the Steelers are still there or the Rams are there. Change your strategy and take that,
Yeah.
And you could say the same thing with quarterback. Maybe your strategy is to wait on your quarterback, like we said, but Patrick Mahomes falls to you at 30th overall. Yeah, you're going to change your strategy and take Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. So, yeah, I can give you all the advice, all of helpful tips that you want, but at the end of the day, your draft, you have to be flexible and change with how things are going.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's just like a regular draft board. Sometimes a certain position group will start,
that's very
getting
true.
picked off, and before you know it, you might have to change your decision-making process a little bit. And oh my God, all the tight ends are going. Where am I going to go? And you might have to sacrifice a running back, grab that tight end, and then continue building your roster from there.
That's another place where tiering really helps. I thought of another example of that. Like tight end is a good position to tier. And I'm looking at the tight end tier 1 on Fantasy Pros, and I disagree with this too. I think Travis Kelce should be in a tier all by himself, quite honestly.
No kidding.
You can go into the draft thinking, okay, I want Travis Kelce. I'm not going to overdraft him, but if he's available to me in the 3rd round, it depends on how many teams you have. 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, whatever, I'm going to take him. But he's gone. You don't take another tight end instead. He's in a tier all by himself. You take a different position, and then you wait to see if Darren Waller, George Kittle are there in the next round.
Right. One quick, before we wrap this up, and I want to tell you a little bit about Nestor Thomas before we wrap this up. But
sure.
Do you take bye week into account when you do?
Great question. I meant to get to this. Thank you for bringing it up. Really? No, I don't. If maybe mid draft, I'm like, oh crap, I've got like 5 players that have a week 8 bye. Maybe then I start thinking about it. But even then, I'm like, okay, I'll lose week 8.
Yeah.
But the rest of the season, I'm good. I really don't have bye weeks as much of a thought. Because you want to get the best players, and
right,
just get the best value and best players, most talent that you can possible. And if that means, you lose 1 week because you have a bunch of buys, then so be it. But really, if you're drafting the best players available, then you're getting good depth. You should get good depth. And if you're hitting the waiver wire every week, then you should be able to plug in guys that, are capable of starting and helping you win on that week that you have a lot of buys. So I would say no. Overall, I don't take that into much consideration.
That's the way I've always looked at it. I just, I wanted to make sure that, or whether maybe I was overlooking somewhere where I could get an advantage. But no, I've never thought they were that important either. I pick my players.
Right. Yeah. The only situation where I would say take it into account is if you're platooning defenses, like we said, or platooning quarterbacks. You don't want to have your platoon quarterbacks both have the same bye.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, all right, that's great. Good to hear. Basically, going forward now, we're into the NFL season. So we're going to have some, do some preview of the Falcons game from Saturday morning. We're going to give you, bring your fantasy questions, and Dave will give you his best answers. So your Falcons comments, your fantasy comments, and I do every year called Nostradamus Predicts, pick against the spread. And last year I had a rough year. It's the first year I was under 500 picking against the spread. I pick all games, give you my best bets, and the thing is, normally you look at around on websites, and a lot of people who pick games do not do well against the spread. I do pretty good against the spread. Dave, you can attest to that. We've done it on other shows we've done. So, come in with your questions about point spread and who you think might be a value. You might want to make a little money off of on Sunday afternoon. So, we got that going for us too. But a lot of football talk coming up. We're really looking forward to it.
It's going to be a really fun season. Yeah, by the time we have our next show, we'll already have had our first regular season game on Thursday. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that as well. We have the Falcons season, of course, that we'll be breaking down. And then your fantasy league, your betting with Nostradamus Predicts. So it's going to be a really fun fall 2021 season.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
That's it for this show. We'll be back next Saturday, as I said, noon Eastern time, 11 a.m. Central. Make sure that I give the Central time zone some love for Tom.
Yeah, and if Justin Fields is available when late in your draft, I take him. He's not going to start week one, and the Red Rifle's going to start week one, as Matt Nagy promised him he's going to start week one. But I don't think he's going to start too long.
Yeah. You get a reward this week. It took us 61 minutes for you to bring up Justin Fields. I'm impressed. I'm really, really impressed.
There you go. I had to bring him up at some point.
Right, yeah. Couldn't go the whole show without bringing him up. Yeah. So follow us on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. Please like and subscribe to the show on YouTube, on Facebook. Subscribe to the channel, Atlanta Sports Unlimited. In addition to all this great football content, we're looking forward to the football season. Atlanta Braves in a really great playoff race for the NL East division race. So great content all around on Atlanta Sports Unlimited. Please give us a like and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Plenty of things going on here, so we're looking forward to it. We got a lot of great content coming.
Absolutely, and we'll see you next Saturday.